Going on? You all right? I hope the weather is not totally catastrophic where you are. I am in LA, and I got to be honest with you, the last few days, the weather has been perfect. If you're in California for the California experience, the weather has been perfect. A little hot, but not like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Not that hot, which is good if you're out there, in front of studios with signs holding the line. I want to show my support, give my support, speak my support to my union brothers and sisters. I am a dues-paying member of the WGA and SAG-AFTRA. But the truth is, their demands are not being met. Their reasonable demands are not being met to earn a wage that would entitle them to make a decent, okay living for the profession they've chosen with the protections they deserve in the new media landscape. It's important. It does affect the art and the business of movies and television. And, well, let's just break it down a little bit because I had to learn myself. And there are some things we can and can't do on this show now in support of the strike. So SAG-AFTRA, the actors, struck because the actors were not offered a fair contract by the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. That's the trade association that represents the major movie studios, the broadcast television networks, the streaming services, and some cable TV networks. And it's just, look, there was also talk a week or so ago, it was a fact that these entities, these movie studios, broadcast television networks, streaming services, some cable networks, were going to try to starve the writers out. So the timing is good. It's supportive. It's a big day and a big week and a big action for unions in general in this business. Now, here are the key issues. Compensation has been eroded with the rise of streaming, obviously. Rules need to be changed for both upfront pay and residual payments. They kind of got away with some stuff for a lot of years here now with no back end for the writers and actors. As artificial intelligence is used more in productions, a contract needs to protect the identities and the work of union members going forward. Obviously, I'm not at the table, but I don't know why this stuff isn't just declared out and out animation. But maybe that's a conversation. Now, the deal is SAG-AFTRA was not offered a fair agreement that addresses all the terms I just mentioned. While the union is on strike, here at WTF, we will not be booking anyone to promote anything that's the product of the companies in the trade association. The union guidelines do say that any pre-banked press appearance that was agreed upon and completed before the strike date of Thursday, July 13th is permitted to air or be published. We have a few interviews that are banked from before the strike, and we will still air those interviews to discuss the guests' life and work. Like, for instance, today's interview with Cillian Murphy was recorded on June 27th. Now, this is a big deal because I don't guess with people's perception of what we do out here in Hollywood, or just to say, or what we do in show business, just how many people are involved and what it means to be paid fairly. I mean, whatever your job may be and however much you make, the unions are there to protect you. Somehow or another, over the last 50 years or so, the unions have been demonized and broken down. But these unions out here are pretty fucking strong. And they're not asking for anything but a fair deal. I mean, it doesn't matter what you think of how much money actors make or how much money writers make. There's a lot of actors and writers that make little, that don't make much, that are working to get by. Background actors, for instance, could get screwed entirely if they're not represented properly by the union, by a deal. They could just be made up. They can almost any actor, just take their face and their body and, throw it into the magic machine and you can produce the zombie version. I mean, that's a big deal. I don't know much about it. I know it's frightening, and I know that on some level, parts of it are inevitable. But the deal needs to be fair, and it needs to represent this stuff. And I have hope that it will. So I struggle sometimes for many years to maintain my health insurance. Obviously, for years when I wasn't working in the union, I had to go to Cobra, I had to go to Kaiser. I had, there is something about being represented by a union that does feel like you have a voice, like you're protected, and it's definitely the only way with some professions that you have any traction against corporate bloodsuckers and exploiters. Now, granted, in this particular instance, the exploiters are entertaining you. Well, we'd like to think, as actors, writers, and creators who are represented in this union, that we are necessary. We are a necessary part of that, and that we deserve compensation that is relative to the insane, greedy cash grab that streaming companies and their parent companies are getting. It's really kind of an amazing thing to see union action and to see it still alive. I think there's a bit of momentum on behalf of a lot of unions post-COVID. If we can get back to that, if we can get back to just, trying to get people a fair wage and get some health coverage in a reasonable way, in a safe way, it's really the way it should be. But there are forces within certain political factions and business factions that will do anything not to do that. Child labor laws are being broken down in some states. Yeah, that's where it goes. God forbid corporations compensate their workers properly who are grown-ups trying to raise kids. Why not just get the kids into the factory at the machines? Yeah, 11, 12, why not? They have hands. Why not lose them? So maybe that's a little extreme, but that's what's going on. So that's the deal. I'll be at Dynasty Typewriter tomorrow. That's Tuesday, July 18th, and also next Tuesday, July 25th. And I'm back at Largo on Thursday, July 27th. I'll be at the Salt Lake City Wise Guys on August 11th and 12th for 4 shows. Then I'm at the Las Vegas Wise Guys on September 22nd and 23rd, also 4 shows. And in October, I'm at Helium in Portland, Oregon on October 20th through 22nd. You can go to WTFpod.com for tickets to all these shows, and if I add shows, I'll let you know. These club shows are primarily to work out whatever the hell I'm working on. I mean, that's what's happening. I guess I'm just going to keep doing it. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. There are lots of tough choices in life, and sometimes the path forward isn't clear. It would be helpful to have a map or guide to get you through the rough roads. And that's what therapy can do. Whether it's decisions around relationships or your career or just what to do with your time, therapy is like a navigator, giving you the right information to forge ahead. For me, I can reach decision overload, but once I get a handle on those things, I feel less stressed and I can move forward. And getting help from a therapist is always good. It's always helpful. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/WTF today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/WTF. So, I was in New Mexico. I don't know if I really talked to you about that, but if I did, I'll say it again. My dad is hanging in there. He hasn't changed much since the last time I saw him a few months ago. Still, tethered to the reality. Still able to remember things and engage. Had him laughing a lot. I remember I told you that. But there's a story I forgot to tell you, which I think is something that has some kind of broader relevance. Is that, before my dad got ill years ago, he was in trouble. And it was one of those things where I couldn't really wrap my brain around, what was happening or what was going on with him. But, years ago, he was the prescribing doc at a pain management clinic that got busted. There was a big crackdown on pain management in general with the opioid epidemic. And the one my father worked at was busted by the feds, and he was accused of overprescribing, and I just it never sat right with me. My dad was just not that guy, and I had told him even years ago when he was going to get into the business as a prescribing doc, I said, you're going to be dealing with drug addicts, and you should really know what drug addicts are because they're going to be around and they're going to be, worming you. But pain management was this weird, vague thing that, was the gateway to the opioid epidemic. But my dad was working in earnest, and I can't speak for his partner, but when they cracked down, my dad got dragged through the mud for overprescribing, and these numbers were ridiculous. Like they were completely ridiculous. Now, so my dad, kind of went broke and, with legal defenses against civil lawsuits and whatnot. And I just never could, he always said he was guilty of nothing. And he just wasn't that guy. So it turns out, and this is the part of the story, they wrote an article on my old man in the goddamn paper and dragged him through the mud and made an example of him in his hometown, caused him tremendous stress, had to give up his license, had to go bankrupt. He had to, he was publicly shamed. And then it turns out his wife, they told me the story the last time I was there, but I heard it again, and I think it has broader implications, is that my dad's wife reached out to the FBI, and he had been vindicated, totally vindicated, like a couple of years ago. They never informed my dad's wife or my dad that after a full investigation, he'd been totally vindicated because somebody had stole the script pads. Now, I don't know if his partner colluded or not. I can't make any accusations, but it was not my dad. Somebody either sold all the script pads or just writing phony scripts, and the FBI said he was entirely not guilty. But was there an article in the newspaper about that? No. Was there any conversation about it? No. Not as interesting a story, is it? And I imagine that happens a lot. I imagine people just fade back into the background, and there's no real traction to vindication. And it's just sort of heartbreaking that this was the sort of last kind of massive event of his life revolved around this horrible situation. And now, his memory of it is fading. And I guess if there is any silver lining to dementia, it's that, the good things fade along with the bad things and along with all things. But I thought I should tell that story because no one else is going to tell it. And I know that my father and his wife listen to this show, and I just think it's important to know that side of the story. I don't know why the Albuquerque Journal didn't follow up after, making my dad's life a walking hell in the legal. I don't know why the FBI didn't reach out in a more quick fashion or to make sure that they knew that, given that he was in the position he was in. But I'll do it. I'll do it right here on my podcast. My father, Barry Marin, was totally vindicated from all the charges against him by the FBI. All right. It's kind of touching somehow. Fucking sad story sometimes, life, right? All right, look. This Cillian Murphy interview that you're about to hear was, again, it was recorded on June 27th. And we're going to talk. Here we go.
So I got them to keep it for me, and then I worked like a year.
To get the guitar?
Yeah.
Did it have the white binding on it? Like around the edge, that tobacco sunburst with the white?
No, it doesn't have the white.
Oh.
No, it doesn't have the white.
But it's an old Fender, new Fender?
I guess I bought it, so it's like 30 years old.
You still got it?
Yeah, man. My son plays it now.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is that the only guitar you got?
No, I have an SG, like a black SG.
That's good, like a newer one?
I can't remember, but that's about 20 years old as well.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and I have one of those old, I can't remember what it's called. Remember there are these like kit guitars you could buy in the 50s in like, I have
like
one of
a
those.
Silvertone or something?
That's what it is.
A Silvertone.
Yeah.
Come with the amp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't get the amp, I just got the guitar.
Yeah, that's good.
They're a nice sound off those.
Yeah.
And I like the way they look.
Yeah, they're great. They're great looking. So, but the music thing obviously was a dream At some point.
It totally was, yeah. Yeah. And then it just died.
So, but it's like it's a nice jump to go to something equally as potentially unlucrative.
Yeah.
It worked out for you. I think in the long run, to succeed as an actor in general is even better than succeeding as a magician. A magician. Well, that's a tough racket. Magicians. But as a musician, musicians they do all right for a while.
I know.
But you really got to land that big money take.
It's a young man's game too, isn't it?
Yeah, but if you're a young man and you lock in with enough people with a certain sound, you can certainly run that thing into a ground for like 30 years.
Well, certain acts.
Yeah, but it's weird, man. I don't know. Lately, I've been going back and listening to things and watching things that I saw as a younger man and thought I understood.
Yeah.
And then I watched them years later, and I'm like, I didn't even fucking get any of this.
I know.
Do you ever do that?
Totally, yeah.
I did that with you too, oddly.
Huh.
It's not that I didn't get them, but you get so overwhelmed with U2 as a modern rock band. But if you listen to those first two albums, they just sound like some guys playing.
Yeah.
And then that goes away, man.
Yeah.
Did you grow up with them in there?
Yeah, totally. But for me, it kind of started around Joshua Tree. That was my era.
Right. Well, that's when they're bigger than life.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a perfect album. I think it's an absolutely perfect. And it's actually, when you listen back to it, it's a gospel record.
Sure. Yeah, sure. It's all about the Jesus.
Yeah.
It turns out that a lot of their stuff's about the Jesus.
Yeah, but this one I think is
spiritual, a little vaguer. It's not. It's vague.
It's less on the nose. Yeah,
Yes.
I adore that record. I put it on regularly, like on a drive.
Yeah.
It's just a magnificent record.
Sure it is. I remember when it came out, it was one of those records that you could not avoid.
Yeah.
It was like, it just became like oxygen for about 6 months. Do you remember them from when you were a kid?
That was the introduction. I remember I had that on cassette.
Oh, but they weren't around in Ireland.
Oh, they were huge in Ireland. They were like the biggest thing. Yeah, but they were over here. They were over here,
right.
like being famous and playing stadiums.
Doesn't he like go out and busk occasionally?
Bono?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does every Christmas. On Grafton Street. Yeah, he sure does.
I went to see him do his one-man show.
I hear it's amazing.
It's good. He's like, he's good. He's talking about his dad. And But the music's really amazing because it's all stripped down. He does like a handful of songs, but it's only like a cello player and like a keyboard person and him.
And that voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's something.
He really is. I read the book. I loved it.
You did? Yeah, I did. Yeah. I read most of it. I thought we were going to interview him, but then
I'm surprised you didn't.
I don't know, man. You know what I mean? I'm not magic.
It feels like you get everyone else.
Yeah, but they got to come around. There's some people. Like I ran into you. I had no idea you knew the show. And I saw you on. Were you coming or going to New Mexico? Was that what it was?
I was flying with Chris down. We had shot in LA and we were about to start shooting in New Mexico.
That's when I saw you, and I didn't even know Chris or introduce myself or know enough to say anything.
You were unbelievably cool. Yeah. We recognized you straight away.
I didn't even put it together. Did I put it together that was Chris Nolan? I'm a fucking idiot, dude. I don't know like who's who or what's what or what.
We were sitting directly across from you.
I know.
And then afterwards we talked a little bit, and then you said that Chris said that he admired your boots.
Yeah.
And he also admired your bag.
Oh, yeah. Did I tell him where I got them all?
You did,
Oh, yeah, that's right. I told him Filson. They were probably Filson.
That's right.
Or something. Yeah, yeah.
We had a little conversation about that. And then you said, you were from there, which I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that was it.
I went to, that's so funny that like I didn't even, I'm not sure that, I knew who you were because at some point you scared me. So like I was able to, I know that guy. He's the scary guy. And then, like, I didn't even register Chris Nolan. I didn't know that you're going out there to do Oppenheimer. Like, theoretically, you assume that people in Hollywood were up to speed. But I'm like, who's this Chris guy? Oh, my God.
He's made a few movies, yeah.
Big movies.
Yeah.
I saw Oppenheimer yesterday.
Oh.
And
Did you see it in IMAX?
Yeah, I saw it in the whole thing on film, 70 millimeter film, no. IMAX experience.
I haven't seen it like that yet.
You haven't?
No.
You could have gone, but you couldn't get on the list. There was nobody there. You had Jordan Peele was there, and Jon Favreau, and Elvis Mitchell, and a few other reviewers. There was like 12 people in the room.
That's pretty cool.
But those guys went. They go see the master's work. But the movie's great, and you were great in it.
Okay.
It's quite a process, man.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen it since January, and it was a little overwhelming when I did see it. So I don't know. My recall or kind of response to it is probably not really accurate.
Overwhelming. It's an overwhelming movie.
Yeah.
That's all that guy makes.
I know.
But this was like, it's so funny because this is only the second real biopic this focused that I've seen in the last year, and the other one was with Butler as Elvis.
Oh yeah.
And it's so funny that the process, like he couldn't shake Elvis. I talked to him months after the thing, and he's still having a hard time shaking Elvis. But it seems like you've gotten rid of Oppenheimer.
Well, yeah, I feel like I'm pretty much back to myself. It was intense. Like it was intense.
Yeah.
And I don't know. You're gonna have to ask me a question.
Oh, about it?
Yeah.
How about that moment where you just go up the scaffolding and go face to face with the first bomb?
Oh yeah.
And you just stand there, looking at the bomb.
Yeah.
It's very quick. That piece. It's like it's only about 15 seconds. But I imagine that was a big day.
Yeah.
In terms of what you were thinking.
Yeah. I mean, it was huge. A lot of the things about this film, though,
Yeah.
It's thematically so huge.
Oh, yeah.
And all the questions it poses, all these huge kind of ethical,
Right.
moral kind of paradoxes.
Yeah.
It's kind of massive, and it's very hard to kind of give sound bites about it. You know, you try and do it as truthfully and as honestly as you can and as respectfully as you can. But
The performance, you mean?
yeah, and like
Yeah.
and try to get yourself into that headspace. It was a tough one. This one, it was very, very complex. You know, the way you're playing a normal protagonist. It
Sure.
goes from A to B, and there's a curve and there's an arc, and
Yeah.
you end up somewhere else. With him, it was so tricky. Like he was kind of all over the graph in terms of his journey and his arc and how he changed and went backwards and how he dealt with whatever he was dealing with in his head.
Well, yeah, I noticed that. I mean, I noticed that like when you talk about, or you have talked about the seagull, like Chekhov,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So that there is something about, and this is something I learned relatively late in my life about the way drama is structured, that character has to transform.
Yeah.
And I imagine that makes it very engaging as an actor. But Oppenheimer, give or take, was struggling with things or perhaps weighing things, and he fluctuated. But I didn't get the sense that he necessarily, transformed, but the world profoundly transformed because of him.
Yes, because of his actions.
Right.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
it's sort of a different game.
That's why it makes him a kind of an unusual protagonist.
Yeah.
For sure. And then trying to, because his position, myself and Chris always talked about it like that he was dancing between the raindrops morally. That's one way that was very useful to me.
That's
when
interesting.
We were shooting it.
Yeah.
Because there's up to the point of the Trinity test.
Yeah.
It's clear enough because there's Germany, they're the bad guys, we need to get a bomb. But then it gets very muddy, when Germany surrender. And then...
Yeah, what do we do? Do we keep doing it?
We're still making it, yeah.
Yeah, we're in the middle of this thing.
Yeah, we're almost there.
Yeah.
And that's when it gets very interesting dramatically.
Well, I think that you played it well in that this thing that you talk about him going back and forth is really like, what he's weighing is something that no mortal had to weigh ever. And then on top of that, it's sort of like, how much is a rationalization?
Yeah.
And how much was it a belief, right? Because all these nerds just want to, see if what they think is correct.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's theoretical
Right.
physics, yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, that's sort of what goes through the movie, and what, he gets sort of prosecuted or crucified for is his moral compass. But, he had to somehow weigh in his head that, well, if we don't do it, they're going to do it.
Yeah.
And it's going to exist whether we do it or not.
Yeah.
So let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. And again, that there's all sorts of ways I imagine they manage to rationalize it or live with it.
Yeah, of course. Some of them, but I thought Chris was pretty smart in those moments. Like after, the moment where you speak briefly after the bombings.
Yeah.
And you're walking through that crowd that, you have, like, it's very weird as an audience member to see everybody cheering because you're like, ugh, they don't know this is a disaster. You can get it, but there's actually, as an audience member, there's sort of a moral turpitude within you watching that. But as you walk through the crowd as Oppenheimer, clearly there's some people in the crowd that were not handling it well.
Yeah. Well, I think that was very deftly handled by Chris himself in terms of how do you kind of... these themes and the reality and the horror and the fucking genocide and all the stuff that happened.
Right.
How do you kind of put that into a film? And he did it in this way that is so subtle, I think, and beautifully handled in the immediate aftermath, because it's this kind of this paradox or juxtaposition of like celebration and horror at the same time.
Kind of amazing.
Yeah, and how do you do that? I thought he did it brilliantly.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, and also to make him empathetic if possible.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, though, whether it's a big movie or not, me as an American guy, as a guy who grew up in New Mexico.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I didn't know any of that shit.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't read the book.
Yeah.
You know, I knew Oppenheimer, they'd done something out there.
So did you know about Los Alamos and all that?
Sure. But I grew up knowing there was a lab there.
Yeah.
And I knew, of course, we knew that the missile tests are there. And there's a museum over there. Did you go over there?
Yeah.
The Atomic Museum, where it's at Kirkland Air Force Base. Is it there?
Oh, actually, maybe I didn't go to that one.
Where they actually have models of the two bombs.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't go to that.
Yeah. I mean, we went there when I was in school
you were a
and
kid,
stuff. Sure.
yeah.
And, you know, I went to White Sands, but that was not, he didn't have anything to do with that.
No.
But I didn't know that they built the fucking town
Yeah.
for him.
Yeah.
Like, I had no idea that history, and I grew up there. It made me feel stupid, but I miss a lot of things. I shouldn't beat myself up. I don't know anything. But so for me, to learn the story, and I certainly didn't know the story afterwards. I didn't even know he was a Jew, and I'm a Jew, and I like knowing when people are Jews. But I didn't even know that.
Right.
You know, it is a fairly thorough telling of that guy's story.
Yeah, I think so.
Did you read the book?
I did, yeah, I did.
Yes, you had to.
I didn't have to, you know, like, you know, the thing about like playing a real life character, which I hadn't really done before, certainly not an iconic figure like Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
There's a wealth of archival stuff. You know, you can spend months and months and months and
You
months.
can see him talking.
Exactly, but that was also could be slightly unhelpful because, you know, when he's giving those lectures and all, that's quite performative. I don't think that's him like kind of in a candid setting, just talking to his buddies. So I use them, but what I'm trying to say is that there's so much there that you can't. If you spent all your time trying to absorb it, you're just losing. You know, I think what you have to go after is the kind of humanity and the person,
right? And
then ultimately, the script is your main resource,
right?
You know, Chris's version of events is what we're telling, So that became the thing that I studied most of all. And then, again, you know when you're in a scene, all the research and everything that you've done, you kind of just abandon it and you're in the moment with the other actor, and it's all about what's happening right there in the moment.
Sure.
And you're trying to be as human as possible in that. And so
once you've done all the preparation.
Exactly. So what I'm trying to say is that it's not an intellectual process at that point. It's a purely instinctual, emotional one.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, you know, like for me, like and also like talking about Austin, you know, Butler and Elvis, that these are two characters. Like it's interesting that these are going to be the huge biopics of the last couple of years. You know, they're fairly explosive, if you don't mind the, you know, different types of explosions, but nonetheless impactful, right? And you know, he kind of had to submerge himself in, you know, this being him. Now, like for somebody like Oppenheimer, I imagine there is some sort of key that you found to his humanity, like, you know, like going into it, because like even when I go into these conversations, like I have to find like some place to start.
Yeah.
Like, you know, where did you start with that guy in terms of like, who is this guy? Do you think that way?
I do, of course. At the beginning, it was quite superficial. Because I wanted to get the silhouette and the physicality right.
Okay, right.
You know, because he had such a distinctive frame.
Yeah.
And he was so slim and so kind of like underweight all of his life. And he just existed on like cigarettes and martinis. And, so we spent an awful lot of time with the, you know, costume. So I got the script like 6 months before we started shooting. So while I was reading all this stuff, I was flying out here and we were doing camera tests and makeup tests and costume tests.
Right.
So I really wanted to get that right first. And sometimes, not always, that's a way into the interior.
Mm-hmm.
So for me this time, in this particular character, the silhouette and the look and the physicality was a good way in. And then the voice. And then reading a lot about his kind of childhood and particularly his adolescent years
Yeah.
was quite
Helpful?
Yeah.
And you just kind of put that into your brain?
Yeah, that's what you
Yeah,
do.
yeah. I don't trust it, but I imagine for me,
You don't trust what?
myself in that. I think I'm doing that, but I haven't done enough acting to be convinced that I'm doing it.
Yeah, I really struggle talking about acting.
Sure.
Talking about the process, talking about what it is, and there's all these like stupid cliches like it's alchemy and it's but it kind of is. It kind of don't know what happens. You do all the work, and I love research and I do it all, but ultimately when you get on the floor between you and your partner and the director, that's where it happens.
Right.
That's why I don't love rehearsal because that's where it happens. And I really, really rely on instinct.
Yeah. Well, that's you have to. It's clear because that's where the moments happen.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much you know about me or the show, but I mean, I have sort of an obsession with Ireland.
Yeah, I know you've been there recently as well. Yeah.
I was there recently, but also there was a period there where I'm like, I'm going to move there. Well, but lately it's shifted. Because I realize it's too far away. I'm not Irish. It's not like they're just going to embrace me. And now I'm doing a whole comedy bit about being just the guy in the county where I'm just the Jew who bought the farm, and how locals are just watching me try to shear sheep, and I'm chasing after them. They're going, it looked easy on the video, so I've shifted a bit, but I'm still sort of fascinated with how down to earth the culture is. And the last trip I took, I went to the theater impulsively.
Cool.
And I don't do that a lot. I wish I went more. It's not part of my life. But for some reason, I was in Ireland. I was in Dublin, and there was something at the Abbey Theater. I'm like, well, fuck it. Just go watch it. It sounds interesting. And it struck me differently than my experience with American theater because it felt like it was something that people did in Ireland. That theater was vital somehow. Am I misreading that?
No, I think you're right. It definitely is very vital, yeah.
I saw the Solar Bones.
Oh, yeah, that's an adaptation of a novel,
yes,
isn't it? Yeah, that's
that
right.
Mike McCormick novel, and the guy was
book.
Stanley Townsend. Do you know that guy?
Great actor.
Yeah.
Great actor.
And it's basically a one-man show.
Cool.
And it was that story. The guy's dead,
Yeah.
And it's an hour and a half of him sort of.
Is it kind of a monologue?
Yeah, it's all him.
Excellent.
And it seemed interesting, and then I wanted to read the book, and then I bought the book, and then I'm like, maybe I should move to Ireland. It all ties together. But the experience of going to the Abbey Theater there and looking at the people that went, it wasn't like, the kind of audience you see at American theater.
You mean like subscription kind of audiences?
Right.
Yeah.
It seemed like people who were like, well, this is something we need to do.
Yeah. I think it does exist. I think, it can always be better. But I think there's there's a great tradition of theatre in Ireland.
Yeah.
And there's a great festival in Galway where I've done a lot of theatre work, the Galway Arts Festival. And there's the Gate Theatre, and there's obviously the Abbey that you're at.
Yeah.
So there's great theatre makers there. So yeah, and there's the Dublin Theatre Festival, and young people do go along, if that's what you mean. Like, it's not just grey hair you see in the audience.
Well, what did you like? You don't come from a family that you're not from a family of artists necessarily.
No, teachers.
Yeah.
Well,
that's supportive.
In what way?
Well, I mean, I always feel like teachers they're not going to be sort of like, what are you doing with your life?
Depends on the teacher, I suppose.
I guess that's true.
I
guess I always think of them as relatively progressive.
Yeah. Well, my mum and dad, they're retired now. They're both teachers. And then my grandfather was a headmaster.
Well, that's different. It's their job to go, what are you doing with your life?
And then all my aunties and uncles, the majority of them are teachers.
Where'd you grow up in Ireland?
In Cork.
Yeah, that's the one place I haven't been.
Oh, man.
That's the place?
That's the best county.
Really?
I have to say that. No, it's beautiful. Cork and Kerry are my kind of favourite parts of Ireland.
I was in Dublin, then I drove over to Galway, and then we were up in Donegal.
Beautiful.
That's where we would spend most of the time.
Yeah,
that's stunning up there.
Yeah.
Not much up there.
No, which is kind of what makes it so attractive.
But when you drive into towns, you're like, what happened here? But I don't know if that's the right response, but it did seem a little isolated in some places.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But so what how does it go? Like, do you have brothers and sisters?
I'm the eldest of four. Yeah.
4?
Yes.
And are any of them artists?
No, my not professionally. My brother is an excellent pianist, jazz.
Oh, yeah?
Pianist. Yeah,
He
but
can do it?
He's really, really good. Yeah, and he used to play in the band with me when we were kids.
What was that band's called?
We were called the Sons of Mr. Green Juice.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Could
know
you
that?
play Zappa?
Man, it's hard to play Zappa.
Yeah, I'll say.
No, we were fans. Not
Yeah.
of the totally avant-garde stuff. More
Yeah.
of the kind of like Hot Rats and
The fun stuff.
Yeah, that stuff.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
So
So he stuck with it.
No, he's now a product designer.
Oh,
yeah.
but he can play piano.
Yeah, he's really, really good at the piano. So there was lots of books around. There was, we would go to a lot of music, like traditional Irish music.
Oh, yeah?
A lot of sessions in pubs, that kind of thing.
Those seem exciting. I don't know a lot about him other than the Banshees of Inisherin. Was it
Inisherin, yeah.
Inisherin?
Yeah.
Like that seemed to capture something about that pub playing business.
Yeah, that it wouldn't be the sort of session that I would have gone to as a kid. That's a very idealized, stylized, beautiful version
That's a
of it.
small pub version. Like there's 12 people in the town.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No. The sort of sessions I would go to would be a pub in the city, and you'd fall asleep under the bench.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you'd be taken. But they were great music. But in terms of like creativity, if that's what you're asking,
sure,
it was around. Mm-hmm. And I was always from a young age. I was interested in story. I was interested in music, and I was interested later on in film.
Yeah, but so it starts with story.
Yeah, I love stories.
Yeah, like what? You're a big reader.
Yeah, I love to read. Not novels mostly.
Yeah, like Irish ones.
From anywhere.
But do you remember like which one was sort of like, holy shit, this is fucking amazing?
In terms of Irish novels?
Or just in terms of any novel that might have blown your mind.
Well, there's a few, like there's a writer in Ireland called John McGahern, who's a stunning writer, and there's a writer called John Banfill. There's a writer called Claire Keegan. These are like, stories that I discovered, and I've always just been fascinated by story.
What do you think it is about? Well, I mean, story is one thing, but there's something like, maybe I'm romanticizing it, maybe I'm reading into it, but there seems to be something obviously heavy-hearted about the Irish arts, other than the music kind of, but the stories and the plays. And there's just something about, I don't know, man. I just get this feeling that it's not darkness, but it's sort of like
melancholy.
Yeah, or an acceptance of the darkness.
Yeah.
Is that sort of the type of books those were?
Perhaps, yeah. That's always the stuff that I've been interested in.
Yeah.
That's always the kind of story I've been interested in, is that kind of naughty, Gordian, weird, kind of like fucked up part of our human psyche.
Right.
That's always the stuff I've been interested in.
Yeah. It kind of builds your brain.
I think it's the stuff that's ripe for drama.
Yeah.
A good man's life is probably quite boring, whereas the other, it's not the most interesting story.
If it even exists.
Well, for sure. Yeah.
I think a lot of those stories start out with a good man's life, and then we find out, that guy's not so good.
Now it's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So, but do you start? Were you like writing? Was the idea like what kind of? Did you grow up Catholic?
Yeah.
But not too hardcore?
No, and then kind of abandoned it as soon as I could,
Yeah, a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Was it, what was your moment? Where you're like...
I don't really know.
Yeah. It was slow? It was gradual?
Yeah, I mean, it was just everywhere in Ireland. You went to mass and you got to your communion, you got your confirmation, you did all of that. I was taught by brothers. It was just everywhere.
Yeah.
But then, as you start to examine things a bit more closely, you begin to question things, and it's just
yeah. And I imagine the stories helped with that
for sure. Yeah.
That's always the good part about being a sort of sensitive, interested young person, is that you start to realize like, no, this is bullshit.
Yeah, well, that's one of the great things about adolescence, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, that's when the fuck you eventually, sort of starts to settle in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have that in you?
Fuck you. Yeah, but in a very I was in school, I would like get thrown out of class, but it was never malicious. I was just a kind of
you weren't an outlaw.
No, not really. No, but I was always interested in I was always curious about artists.
Yeah,
because I never encountered them. I never met any, and the idea of somebody making a living from making art of whatever form, I thought was incredibly romantic.
Yeah,
and they seemed very alien to me. And I grew up in the 80s in Ireland, so like U2 were doing it, right?
Sure.
There was like Jim Sheridan and Neil Jordan, and there was a few, but generally, it was hard to make a living.
Sure.
You talk about the theatre scene now in Ireland and it's vibrant.
Yeah.
But back in the 80s and stuff like that, it was very hard to get stuff put
on. Was Tommy Tiernan around?
Tommy Tiernan, yeah, he's been around. I heard your podcast with Tommy. That was excellent. Yeah.
The philosopher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys had a good old chinwag.
Yeah. Well, comics. But you remember him from when you were a kid?
Yeah. He was famously on the Late Late Show. He was full of the fuck you.
that was his brand for a while.
Yeah.
But now he's sort of the wise old man.
It's very thoughtful. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting to see somebody evolve like that.
Yeah, he's a good actor too.
He is a good actor. Yeah. All right. So you start to realize like, well, some people will make a living, but not most.
Exactly. Yeah. Or else you just go away. Like people like Liam Neeson or Gabriel Byrne. That you just you go away.
Yeah.
So it didn't.
And
really
then it works out. Was there part of your brain that's like, oh, I have to leave for this to work out?
That's a kind of very common Irish narrative.
Oh yeah.
I went to London for 14 years and then come back, and that seems to be very common.
Yeah.
To go away and then to come home.
Well, I guess that's the nature of a small country and a small scene, is that, you have a choice. Like, are you going to roll the dice and become part of the big scene?
Yeah.
Try to? Or are you just going to settle for your place that you've worked for in the small scene?
Yeah, and I guess that's a universal thing in small towns.
Sure.
And,
small cities,
Yeah, so...
So when did you start acting officially?
When I was 20.
20.
Yeah.
What do you mark as the beginning, when you got paid or when you got a real role? I mean, did you do it when you were a kid?
I did a year of a law degree, which was a terrible decision, and I failed like spectacularly.
What made you want to do that, or made you think you wanted to do that?
Kind of parental pressure.
Sure.
Yeah, and just me not quite figuring out my path or whatever.
Right.
But so, and then I did a few plays in college, like, amateur drama stuff. And then there was this theatre company that were in Cork City at the time, and they did a production of Clockwork Orange in this nightclub in Cork City, and it was fucking unbelievable. It was promenade, and like there was techno music and all the all the actors had like mohawks, and all the droogs were like, it was fucking blew my mind.
Right.
Absolutely blew my mind. So I then I knew the guys that ran the theatre company, and I used to kind of see them around in pubs in Cork, and I would pester them. And eventually I got an audition for a play, and I did the audition, and I got the part.
Yeah.
And that was a play called Disco Pigs.
Yeah.
So we toured that for a long time.
Yeah.
And then eventually they made that into a movie. So that's how it started.
So coming at it, though, that's one that you were, what, 19 or something?
I was like 19, 20, yeah.
Was it a huge production or just a weird local production?
No, it was tiny. It was only two of us. It was me and Eileen Walsh, my good pal, and it was directed by Pat Kiernan. It was written by Enda Walsh, who's still my good pal, who I'm still working with.
This is Disco Pigs.
Correct, yeah.
But the Clockwork Orange thing was.
Oh, that one. It was just it was like site specific, so they only put it on in that nightclub.
So it was kind of this avant-garde kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it was like a happening, like an event.
Totally, and it was fucking dangerous. You know?
Yeah.
It was dangerous and sexy, and I was just knocked out because I'd never been to the traditional theatre.
Sure,
do you know?
But what a great experience to have.
Yeah,
like I saw a production of Sam Shepard's Tooth of Crime that was put on by a guy that I worked at the restaurant with in high school. And it was crazy. Yeah. Like, I didn't even know what the fuck I was watching. And you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I understand this.
Yeah.
But I want to be part of this somehow.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I felt.
Yeah. And so Disco Pigs, that was also a small production? You knew
It started as a very small production, and then it toured. We brought it to like the Dublin Theatre Festival, and then we brought it to the Edinburgh Festival in London. And
what's that about?
The play?
Yeah.
It's about these two teenagers that are like not related, but brought up side by side, and
Yeah.
they develop this kind of patois, this language together that nobody else can understand. And then the relationship gets very, very heavy and very intense. And then my character wants to, take it to the next level and make it sexual, and the other character doesn't. It's kind of about the fracture of the relationship.
Oh yeah.
So it was very contained, very powerful, brilliantly written, and it kind of exploded. The play did,
What year was that?
96.
And why do you think it exploded? What was it speaking to?
I think it was the language, it was the writing,
Yeah.
and it was a brilliant production and a great soundtrack.
And these were all people around your age, the director and the writer and your co-star?
Yeah.
But so you didn't really study acting?
No. No, but theater for me was
No, I'm not laughing at you. I love hearing that.
I know. It felt to me that like once I started on the stage, that was university of
Right.
I mean, I was learning all the time, and you do a play, you do it endlessly, relentlessly. We did that play for 18 months nonstop and toured it all over the place.
So you're being directed. You're
Yeah.
working with other actors.
Yeah.
People are chiming in, and you're open-minded enough to take it in.
Yeah, man. But it felt, for me, it was like a surrogate band. It felt like I was kind of going on tour, except not with the band, but with these other pals of mine. And we
Sure.
were like doing the play late at night and going out drinking and having a great time at festivals. So I was having the same experience that I would have had in the band that had just collapsed.
Yeah, except you didn't have to be like, you missed that drum solo. You didn't have to yell at your peers
Yeah, exactly.
about fucked up notes.
Yeah.
But how close with the band did you get to like being a band?
Oh, we were offered a record deal, but then our various parents intervened.
Because you were kids?
Well, I was of age, but my brother was only 16 or something. And then a few of the other parents didn't approve. And it was a shitty deal. It wouldn't have worked out.
What kind of music was it?
It was kind of, we were influenced by Zappa,
Yeah.
and acid jazz. Do you remember that acid jazz?
Sure.
And that? So, but we were a bit late to the scene.
Yeah.
But it was like long guitar solos and kind of, You
were doing the solos?
No, I played rhythm guitar. We had an amazing guitar player. No, it wasn't commercial. It didn't record very well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
It was good live, but it didn't
Yeah.
work in a studio very well.
Yeah.
So
it just kind of broke apart for a lot of different reasons.
exactly.
Yeah. So you toured Disco Pig for what, a year? More?
Around 18 months. Yeah.
And then you're in. You're like, this is it. This is the life for me.
I think so, yeah. And then, but then I got an agent, through that, but then I had a year
In Ireland or where?
In Ireland,
Yeah.
But then I had a year just on the dole, just at home, like making sandwiches and
After Disco Pig?
yeah, watching the telly.
So how did that go for you? What was the reflection? What were you being sent out for by your agent in, where were you still, in Cork?
Oh man, yeah, but I was the shittest auditioner. Like I was so
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, I that's why I never took up acting.
But it's awful, isn't it?
The worst.
I mean,
But I can't imagine what you were going out for, in locally. Were you being sent
I was
for
in
commercials?
I was in Dublin. Yeah, commercials or like.
Oh, you went to Dublin?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was so bad in a room. I felt so insecure and sort of embarrassed by the whole, atmosphere.
Yeah, totally. Because you walk in, there's 10 guys sort of all jacked up, ready to do the exact same thing you're going to do.
Yeah, and I was just full of kind of, I don't know,
Yeah.
insecurity. So I was terrible.
Yeah.
But eventually, you get one job.
Yeah. And what was that?
It was more theater, just more theater. Yeah.
Oh, but that's good,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, great. I worked with this company in Galway, actually, Drew, a theatre company. and
Yeah.
Did a few plays with them, and again was learning, watching great actors, watching great directors, and
What happened to the movie of Disco Pig?
we did that about 4 years after the play.
And that wasn't your first movie?
No, I'd done little bits, little parts, but that was a kind of first big kind of lead, I think.
Yeah. And how was that experience?
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah. And did the movie get any? Did it get any traction?
It did well. Yeah, I went to festivals, and it was small, but I think it got a good response.
Was there anything happening to you personally in terms of how you were experiencing this as an art, or that the things that you were doing? Was it transforming you into something? As you got confident, did you start to enjoy it more in a different way?
I loved being on stage. I've never felt nervous going on stage.
Really?
Where I felt really nervous on film. I've always.
Why do you think that is?
Because in whatever warped logic I had in my brain, was that you go on stage, and if you don't have a very good show, you can just fix it tomorrow.
The next day?
Yeah, and even if the show isn't going well, you can help it along, and you can just get it back. But whereas if you're terrible on film, you're terrible forever. And I found it really unnatural. And then when they would say action, and everything would stop.
Yeah.
And like all these electricians and construction guys,
Sure.
like everyone would just pause and stop, and everything's focused on you.
Yeah.
So when I was young, I found that horrifying.
Sure. Yeah, but there's always the option as you get older, you realize that some directors are like, can we do that?
Yeah. And they're going, sure.
I find that to be, kind of unsatisfying.
What?
The stopping and starting.
Yes.
With film and television, because you can't really get a role going. You realize you're like, oh, this is all going to be put together later. You're shooting out a sequence. All you can focus on is, showing up for the moment that you're shooting.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're literally shooting like 3 minutes in a day.
Yeah.
And it's hard to contextualize it.
Yeah.
So I'm yet personally to find it totally rewarding.
Yeah.
In those moments.
Yeah, I think it can be, but you really have to, I don't know, you have to be really working with good people.
Sure.
I think that's what it is. People that really push you.
Yeah.
And I find that once you kind of accept that you're just given the raw materials, you're just handing it over, and then they're going to make it into something.
Yeah, right. You know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was this play, The Wind That Shakes the Bar?
No, that was a movie.
That was a movie.
Yeah.
Well, what was that? Because that sounded pretty provocative. I didn't see it.
That was a film directed by Ken Loach, and it was set in Cork.
Yeah.
And it was about the War of Independence and the Civil War in Ireland.
Right. So this was that the first time you had to do something that was that connected to the history?
Yeah.
And but what was that like?
Amazing. I mean, he's one of my heroes, Ken Loach.
Great director, yeah.
Unbelievable. In fact, making that film kind of profoundly changed the way I approach working on film, because he shoots everything chronologically.
Oh, God. Well, that's what a gift that is.
Isn't it? I mean, every film should be made like that.
Totally.
Like, obviously, we can.
That's the hardest part about being an actor, I think, is like, all right, we're going to shoot the last scene first because we have to for the whatever. And you're like, what? I don't even know how this is going to go.
Yeah, or I find inevitably they shoot the love scene on the first day.
Oh my God, it's so uncomfortable.
It's so awkward.
But that movie, what was it about Loach other than that changed the way you sort of...
Because he, and I think I talked about this at the beginning, because it's not intellectual, it's instinctual. So because there's no script, you haven't been poring over it and making notes on it and making your pretentious choices.
Yeah.
You just come in and sometimes stuff was happening for real that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
And you're just reacting completely spontaneously.
Yeah,
and completely truthfully.
Right.
And you're not making a choice.
Right.
Do you know?
Right.
And I love that.
Right. But you do make choices at some point.
At some point you do.
Yeah.
But when you feel that like spontaneous, just your body reacting to something, that's what you want to chase down, I think, in film acting.
Well, did it all sort of like fall into place for you in the sense that you're talking about the history of your country.
Yeah.
And there's still a tension. Like, did it connect you to, something deeper?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because I found out lots of stuff about my family that they had been involved.
Oh, yeah?
In the struggle, like way back, that I wasn't aware of.
Like what?
Oh, lots of little stories, about cousins on my mother's side. I think it had a big impact.
How did you find those stories out? Because
I found them out like years later, after I'd done the movie.
So people were telling you, like the family was telling you, like, I don't know if you knew this kind of stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
But also the thing with that movie, civil wars are traumatic, and the Civil War in Ireland, like. The movie came out, I don't know when the movie came out, but up until that point, there were still a lot of people that didn't talk. It split families, and a lot of people went to see that movie. And,
Yeah.
but kind of interestingly, it was made by an Englishman.
Yeah.
You know, so he had a different perspective on it.
Right.
And I'm very proud of that movie, actually.
Yeah, I mean, and that way, but you'd already been acting a long time by the time you did that.
I suppose, yeah.
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 What would you consider your break was? Was it 28 days
I
later?
suppose so, yeah.
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 Yeah, the non-zombie guy.
Yeah.
That movie was pretty huge.
Yeah, well, it kind of reinvented the zombie genre, didn't it? It got
Well, I didn't realize that. I think didn't it introduce us to the idea of the fast zombie?
Yes. Yeah. I think, was that the first movie where they actually ran? And,
Yeah, like it was sort of like that. That made me realize, like, all right, now we're dealing with two types of zombies.
Yeah.
The ones that you can't outrun, and then the ones that you can kind of poke fun at as you run away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also, it was a rage virus. Do you remember? That was what
Yeah,
what was so distinctive about it and quite clever.
Yeah. And when you decide to do movies, like what are you deciding? Like, how do you decide? Just on the script, or?
Oh, well, oh God, I don't know. I never know how to answer this question.
No, I'm sorry. I
No,
asked the same
no,
question.
But you know, so I was reading somewhere that Robert Mitchum looks at it and he goes, location and how many days off.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I mean, some people look at it like that. I wish I could be like that. No, I want to do, this is the cliched answer, you know, I want to challenge myself and work with great people.
Sure.
But that is kind of the truth.
It never plays into it. It's like, where is it and how long?
I mean, I wish I could feel like that. And, you know, you're in Malta, you've got 2 weeks off.
Yeah. Well, not even the time off, but sometimes it's sort of like, this is going to take a year.
Yeah. I don't work on movies that take a year.
You don't?
I've never worked on a movie that's taken a year.
How long did Oppenheimer take?
We made that movie unbelievably quickly. We made it in like 57 days or something.
Come on.
Yeah, it was insane. The pace of that was insane.
Post-COVID?
Yeah.
So you really knocked it out because, like, I'm trying to remember when I saw you on that plane. How did you begin? How did your relationship with Nolan begin?
So that was like 20 years ago. I think he'd seen 28 Days Later, actually.
Okay.
And then we met up here in LA, and he, for some reason, wanted me to screen test for Batman, which I think I knew and he knew I was wrong for, but I did the test. And then he saw something in that and cast me as the Scarecrow. And then we continued on making movies.
You knew it was wrong?
I don't think I'm quite the physical specimen to play Bruce Wayne. Or, you know,
but I mean, but like, you know, like Bale, he's no monster, he's no giant.
Yeah, but man, he transformed himself into that role, and he's done many times. I think he defined that role as Batman.
I wonder, you know, like he's your Batman. Well, obviously he was your Batman.
Yeah,
but in all the Batmans,
who do you like?
Oddly, there's something about the way Michael Keaton did it that I really liked.
Love those Batmans. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
because like there was something like he was like a bat. You know, he was doing this thing with his eyes. You know, like that. It was something. He made this very defined choice.
Yeah, he did. I love those movies. Yeah,
I like the way Val Kilmer looked, but I didn't love his Batman.
I actually tried on the Val Kilmer suit in the test.
Oh, really?
It was quite roomy. It's a fucking operation getting into those things.
So they have all the suits there? Like you were with Nolan, you're like, which Batman do you want to...
I think the Kilmer one was the one that everyone was trying on.
Okay.
Yeah, but they have special guys that are just there.
They're just Batman suit guys?
Yes.
So now, do you put on the suit and then look at yourself and be like, what are we doing here? Like
exactly, yeah.
Like a kid that it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit.
No, it didn't. It wasn't right. It wasn't right.
Yeah.
But it was, all I was there, I was just, imagine this. I'm getting to try on a Batman suit on the Warner's lot.
Sure.
And do a screen test for Chris Nolan. That's all my expectations were at that time.
And that was your first experience with him?
Yeah.
And then you get the other role, the bad guy role.
Yeah, Scarecrow, yeah.
And you kind of owned that thing.
That was fun, yeah.
Yeah. And what's it like hanging around with Bale?
We didn't have that many scenes together.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't cross paths that many times.
Isn't that weird? People don't realize that on movie sets. It's like, I just did a movie with Jude Law. Didn't see him once. Never saw the guy.
But you can still say that you did a movie with Jude Law.
Yeah, well, he was producing it, and and he's the main guy. I only had 2 scenes, but like, didn't stop by to say hi.
It happens all the time, doesn't it?
I know. Like, you just never, but Jesus, Oppenheimer, that was a huge cast.
Oh, man.
You saw everybody's in that movie.
I know. It's an incredible.
I imagine at this point in your career, after working, like wanting to work with great people, that that thing was like they were all there.
I know, it was unbelievable.
You had scenes with all of them.
And I'd kind of forget sometimes when I check the call sheet, and shit, it's Gary Oldman's in tomorrow or Ken Branagh. You know, it was.
That's crazy how many people. I didn't even know Tom Conti was still alive.
Tom Conti is so brilliant in it.
Yeah.
So brilliant in it.
Downey's great. Good to see Downey in a role that he could sort of sink his teeth
He's
into.
electric in that role, I think.
So the relationship with Nolan is like 6 movies long now.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, what have you learned from that guy? How does he work?
I think he's kind of like, I think he might be the perfect director. You know, he's got all of the facets that you need in the perfect director. He's amazing with actors. He's incredibly brilliant visually. He writes the things himself, and they're made for the theaters. You know, they are like event movies, but they challenge you.
Yeah.
You know, I love the way he presupposes a level of intelligence in the audience.
Yeah,
it
doesn't happen often.
No, and he knows the audience aren't dummies, and he knows the audiences can keep up, and he knows the audiences want to be provoked and challenged. And I love working with him, and he really pushes it. You know, he expects the best from you, and he's rigorous in everything and like demanding.
The sets are huge too. I mean,
the sets are huge. But here's the weird thing: the sets are huge, but it feels like being on an independent movie. There's just Chris and the cameraman, one camera always, unless there's some huge set piece, and the boom op, and that's it. And there's no video village, there's no monitors, there's nothing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He doesn't use any of that?
None of that. I mean, he's a very kind of analog filmmaker.
Interesting.
You know?
Even on Dunkirk? Mm-hmm. Man.
Yeah. And I didn't see a frame of this movie until I saw the first teaser.
Of Oppenheimer?
Yeah, I hadn't seen anything. And I've never seen anything on Chris's films until I see the trailer or the finished thing.
Really?
Yeah. And he rarely does ADR. I've done 6 movies with him. I think I've done like 4 lines of ADR.
No shit.
Yeah, because he records sound really well, and he believes in production, you know, production sound, and he creates an environment for the actors. There's no green screen. There's none of that.
I found it to be so like the guy. There was, you know, it was a press screening, so it wasn't packed. It wasn't a premiere or anything.
Yeah.
But whoever was running it was like, all right, this is a 70 millimeter print on film the way Chris wanted you to see it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I felt like it does make a difference.
I think it does.
And I was highly aware of it for some reason in that movie. I know there's other movies that are shot like that. I mean, Tarantino shoots like that. Yeah. But because you're in IMAX, you know, it's like, you know, it's different. The effect is different.
I mean, Chris says it's kind of like 3D without being 3D. Yeah.
I guess. To me, it just reminds me of like movies, theaters when I was a kid. Just a big old screen, you know, where you feel like you're really at an event.
Yeah.
But like the opportunity, and like for me, like I did one scene with De Niro in passing in Joker. And I'm sure he has no recollection of me. It didn't matter. I was it was just whatever it was. But, you know, there is that awareness. And I imagine even though you've done, you know, dozens of movies at this point, there's awareness. Yeah, these are just people. And certainly, you know, that actors are painfully people.
Yes, I do.
But you're aware that sort of like, all right, you know, game on. I'm sitting here with Casey Affleck and we got to do this thing.
Yeah.
And like, I always like seeing that guy.
Yeah, man, he's so good in the movie. That was great. That was a big scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he came in and he was ready to go, and it was again all these stupid kind of analogies, but you know, it does raise your game. It does make you better when you're working with the best actors. It does do that, and it's true. And this was a perfect case in point. Like, you have some of my favorite actors in the world, because they all want to work with Chris.
Yeah.
So they all come in and they play these parts. And the other thing about the movie, I think, is because you got a lot of movie stars in it, but every character they play, they're very significant characters. So it doesn't feel like cameos, if you know what I mean, because they're all playing these real life characters who had a big impact on the world.
And also, I didn't feel the movie starness of anybody.
Yeah.
And that's sort of a miracle. But it's just so interesting that you had to carry this movie in this character that operates at a level, right? Like, you know, you definitely you're holding on to this stuff that you're talking about, and his affectation is what it is, which doesn't, you know, he is who he is all the way through. And then you just, all of a sudden, these other actors, like, you got to deal with Downey, steps into this thing.
Yeah.
And I imagine that, you know, just holding on to the character you've built in certain moments, you have to be aware of that.
Yeah.
Like you're sort of like, all right, just stay focused.
Yeah, of course. But it was a joy, man. It was
Yeah.
a joy working with these actors.
Yeah.
Like I really felt I'll probably never get a chance to work with an ensemble of actors
Oh,
like
my
that again.
God.
It'll probably never happen. So I enjoyed every minute of it. And
Yeah.
again, we talked about like learning. You look at all those amazing actors, you work with all those amazing actors, you're always learning. You're always figuring stuff out as an actor.
Yeah.
And this was like just special.
And how about the Peaky Blinders? Like that's been on, like that's like a long running show now.
I think, yeah. Well, I mean, the TV version is over. Yeah.
Yeah, but
So
was it
it's
like
done.
6 seasons?
6 seasons, yeah.
Oh, there's a movie happening?
There's talk of a movie, yeah.
Yeah, and but that experience has got to be like almost like a family.
Yes, it was, yeah. Like a really violent, aggressive family.
But did you like building a mobster?
Yeah. Well, I've never had a chance to like play a character and age with a character. So I played him, like I started playing him when I was 35 and I finished playing him when I was 45.
Wild.
It was kind of nuts.
That's crazy.
And I mean, the reason why that movie succeeded again, I think, or TV
The show,
shows,
yeah.
is because it's just got excellent writing.
Yeah,
Excellent writing.
there's some good writing sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens now though? Are you like, do you immediately start working again?
I love not working.
Well, that's part of isn't that part of why you got into it?
Yeah. But I know some actors just have to work all the time, and I really enjoy.
But you got a family, right?
I do, yeah.
What do you do with a family? Like, did they come to New Mexico and?
They didn't come to They came to LA when we were in LA, yeah. But again, when you're working like that, it's not a great environment. You're just coming home, you're exhausted, you go to bed.
You want to stay focused.
You don't want to talk about the work, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not ideal.
Yeah.
We had some fun, but no, I just love doing very boring things, I have like
Me too. I can spend a day just trying to figure out what I'm going to eat.
yes. I love doing that, man.
Me too. It's the best day. You're like, you get up and you're like, I'm going to go buy some stuff and I'm going to see if I can make this thing. And then I'm going to eat it in 45 seconds. I'm going to spend the entire day making something.
I do the exact same thing. And I'll timetable it so that I'll go, right, it's going to take me that long to get to the shop. By the time I get back, then I might have a bath.
Yeah.
And then I'll make some food. And
It's for me, like a day it's a full day's work just to enjoy my life.
yeah.
But I like it.
But that's excellent. I mean,
I think so. I'm trying to frame it properly. Like, because there's still part of me that's sort of like, what are you doing, man? You got nothing to do? I know.
yeah.
And then, like, if you're not careful, you start making phone calls. Like, what do we got going?
Yeah.
You know?
And can you, like, because when I came in here, you were just like sitting outside. And
Yeah.
Were you weren't on your phone there or anything? You were just.
No, not. Well, I just watched a King Crimson video for some reason. I am a little. I have a phone problem. I think I watched that. Do you watch that Black Mirror?
The new season?
Yeah.
I watched some of them, yeah.
Did you watch that one, the Smithereens one with Andrew Scott? You know
No, I
that
watched
guy?
that, yeah.
Do you know that guy?
I've worked with Andrew, love him, yeah.
Holy shit!
He's a good actor, man.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, you should watch that one. It's going to
know.
make you think about your cell phone differently.
Did you watch the Lock Henry? Did you watch that?
Yeah.
one? That's good.
Yeah, that was crazy.
That scared me.
Well, there's one. Yeah, you never knew who you're talking to, right? But the one, like the ones that are just horror, like I don't love horror, but the ones that are very close to the bone, sci-fi,
Yeah.
where it's sort of like, oh, that's kind of happening.
Yeah, well,
like
yeah.
I can kind of dig that. The Lock Henry felt like a horror movie.
It did, but I thought it was excellently done.
Oh, sure. They're all kind of like
Yeah.
amazingly written. But like, so what else do you do to fill your day? I can tell you how I do mine. Do you exercise?
I do. I like to run, play the guitar,
Yeah, I'll
read
play guitar,
books.
yeah.
Yeah, so,
I need to read more books.
yeah.
Can you sit there? That's the one thing I have a hard time doing.
Oh, the
is
phone
saying,
has wrecked everything. Man, the phone has wrecked everything.
Sure.
I used to sit down and I would, read a book.
for like 3 hours?
Do you know what I did on the way over here, though? I read a full book on the plane on the way over.
What book?
I read Sam Neill's autobiography.
Oh, yeah. And you just work with him, right?
Well, I
You
worked
worked with
in-
him for years.
Yeah, many years ago. And it's just a gorgeous, funny, delicious book. And it's kind of full of gossip and it's just gorgeous.
Yeah, I've talked to him. He's a character.
Was he on the show?
Yeah.
Oh, man. He's one of my favorite people in the business.
Yeah, he's a riot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking phenomenal actor, too.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys. He's like surprisingly like has a a wit and kind of like an endearing cynicism.
Yes, he does.
You know, that's almost surprising. Same with Hugh Grant. I talked to Hugh Grant and I was like, oh my God, this guy's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, he is.
Have you ever talked to that guy?
I've never met him. No.
Oh my God. Like Hugh Grant now where he's like zero fuck guy.
Yeah.
Like doesn't fuck.
Yeah.
He's just so funny.
It must be so liberating.
Oh yeah. I think that if you make it through all the hoops
Yeah.
and you're okay and you're unscathed and you know where you're at
Yeah.
and you can kind of be like, I'm done with whatever you're expecting.
Yeah. And you just punched through it all.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he took some hits,
Yeah.
but he's all right.
Yeah.
You cook too?
Yeah, I do. But like, I mean, I have a limited repertoire, but I cook. Yeah.
What do you cook? What's the favorite thing? Do you take risks?
Not really. No.
Oh.
Not really. You know the way if you make one thing well, you just keep making that.
Of course, especially if it's like healthy and you can eat it all the time.
Yeah, I do that.
I've been vegan lately.
So I've been trying the vegan thing as well.
How's that going?
I miss cheese.
Oh, cheese is the one you miss.
terribly.
Yeah?
What about you?
I was never a big cheese guy, and I'm not finding that I miss meat so much. And I kind of like the vegan thing because you need to sort of figure out a bunch of variety. I think you have a better shot at variety than you would if you were just eating meat and potatoes.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's all different things you can eat. But I start to worry, I'm like, am I getting enough of this thing?
Yeah.
Am I eating too much of that thing? What about
Yeah.
vitamins? I don't know how our brains got so fucked up about this the food pyramid and the meat paradigm, like that. Sort of like this idea that we need the meat. But I'm not missing it.
I don't miss the meat. No, I've been off the meat for a long time. I did have a kind of a relapse and I didn't feel any better. So I'm back off it again.
On meat?
Yeah.
What'd you relapse on?
Venison.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, at least it was sort of an exotic meat.
Yeah, it was very nice. But I don't eat it anymore.
Yeah. Ethical reasons? Health reasons?
Both now.
Yeah.
At the beginning it was just like, there was loads of mad cow disease and all that stuff happening. Remember?
Yeah.
That's some of the catering.
It was all fucking it was in England.
Yeah, it was a bad scene, man. So I just don't do it now. But I think it's just better for the planet, right?
Of course.
If we all
and
stop eating.
if you're an animal person, you got animals?
I got a cat and a dog, yeah.
And you live in Ireland?
Yeah.
On a farm?
No, by the sea, but not on a farm. No.
Oh.
Yeah.
But so you can just walk to the ocean?
Yes.
That's fucking nice.
It's nice. But I don't swim. So where in Ireland would you move if you're going to move?
Dude, it's so vague.
It's also very expensive there.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, isn't it expensive relatively everywhere?
I suppose, but in Ireland we've got a problem with like housing and everything. But would you tell me where would you like to move, and I can make some calls.
Well, I know a couple people there. I need to get down to that area, like Kerry
The West
and
Coast.
Cork. Yeah, and Dublin's okay, but that was the other thing I start to wonder about my fantasies. It's just sort of like I feel like there's a sense of impending doom here that that you can't sort of escape. Psychologically, I'm not immediately concerned that I'm going to be put on a train.
Yeah.
But there is something psychically happening that's I feel go away almost immediately when I go anywhere.
Yeah.
But I've spent a bit of time in Dublin and I drove around. I just find it all to be beautiful, but I don't know. I couldn't really tell you where, and I'm not even sure what I would do there. Yeah. It's always a question of what do you do the second week? All right, you've made the jump. And then people start telling you, like, just go. If you want to go, just go. Rent a place. Spend a month.
That's a good idea.
And see what happens.
Try it out. I would go in the summertime.
Yeah.
You might get a bit sad with all the rain and all of that.
No, I don't mind that.
You don't mind that? Okay.
No.
Well, then go in the wintertime. There'll be less people around.
In the winter.
Yeah.
But go to Cork?
The West Coast, they call it the Atlantic Coast. It's absolutely stunning all around there. I would highly recommend it.
It's so funny because I believe that that Irish people are generally pretty down to earth and pretty decent people. I don't know morally or anything else, but my feeling for them is that there's not this menace to them.
No, Irish people are pretty laid back in general.
It's so funny though because, and I've made this observation before because I spent years in Boston.
Yeah.
Doing comedy and going to school and everything else, and I really had I was very nervous around the Boston Irish because they were scary. I'm generalizing, but there was tough fucking Irish characters in Boston, and I'm sure as you know when they well here's the thing though, like the first time I went to Ireland, I saw all these Irish people and they look kind of the same. And so I was kind of terrified at first. And then when they're all like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, oh my God, they're totally different. What did America do to the Irish? Hardened them up?
I don't know. I don't know the answer.
But do you know what I'm saying? It's interesting.
It is interesting. I've never been to Boston, so
really,
I can't offer an opinion. Yeah, weirdly, I've never been.
That's like that was sort of built by the Irish, that place.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, it was great talking to you.
Great talking to you, Mark.
You feel good?
Yeah, man.
Thanks for coming, man.
Of course, it was a pleasure. I love